Julie Gunlock is with us. Julie, thank you for coming on the program today.
Thanks for having me.
I kind of feel like we're in the sick ward here because you got the full-blown cold. I'm coming down with one, but
I'm trying to keep
we're
it
going to muddle
together.
through. We're going to hack and cough and wheeze. That's all right. I mean, I apologize to the listeners out there, but you got to do what you got to do.
I'm using my cough button quite a bit.
That's what it's there for. Now, and listen, I really do appreciate you coming in because I know you don't feel good, but I thought this was a really important story, and it's a story that I don't expect we're going to see, frankly, any coverage in the mainstream media here. But, they did report on the arrest of this 27-year-old intern, right, for Sheila Jackson Lee, named Jackson Costco. He's the one who's accused of doxing several members of Congress and their families.
Right.
And one of the things that I, at the time, was like, wow, 27-year-old unpaid intern. Like, how's he making it there in D.C., which is an expensive place to live? He had several, I guess, full-time jobs on the Hill before, but now he was supposed to be an unpaid intern. Well, you started doing some digging, right?
I did, and that is exactly what first made me sort of shake my head and say, 27-year-old unpaid intern. That is unusual in Washington. My husband and I both work. We both get salaries, and we're barely making it. So I don't know how an unpaid intern at the age of 27 makes it. But again, just the idea of being 27 and being an intern is odd. I did start digging, and sure enough, I found out that he is not an intern, according to his own lawyer. And this was reported in the Washington Post and on Fox News. His own lawyer said he was a fellow and that he was paid by an outside organization. Now, I spent 9 years, actually 8.5 years, on Capitol Hill, and I'm pretty familiar with it. And as I mentioned earlier, the 27-year-old and intern was strange because in my experience on Capitol Hill, interns were college students or just graduates, and they were looking for that first foot in the door. There's a lot of people up on Capitol Hill who have wealthy parents, well-connected parents. Apparently, Costco's parents are big Democrat contributors. His father runs a big construction company in San Francisco. So, sometimes there's just wealthy kids up there who can have these internships. But then I looked further. He had worked for Senator Hassan. He had worked for Hassan, sorry. He had worked for Feinstein, and he had worked for Barbara Boxer. In Barbara Boxer's office and Hassan's office, he had paid positions as a sysadmin and a legislative correspondent. Those are not those are not lowly jobs. Those are usually fairly well paid. They're on the policy scale. LC is sort of the low totem pole, but a systems administrator is not. And so it really struck me as strange that he would not only leave the Senate to go to the House side, which again isn't. I mean, it's not unheard of. I did that. I left the Senate and went to the House, but most people go from the House and head to the Senate. So I found that odd that he made that switch. But then to go from a paid position to an unpaid. So again, after a little digging, I found that he wasn't. He was paid for an outside organization, and nobody is asking, what is this outside organization? And of course, everybody is so surprised that people are throwing around the question of whether Soros paid him. Well, if no reporter is going to ask the question, of course, these conspiracy theories are going to crop up, and maybe it's not. There was an outside organization that paid him, and nobody is asking the question of what was that outside organization.
Yeah, and this is one of the problems. Again, I mean, look, there are all kinds of problems when you've got a media that is, 98% in lockstep with one political party.
Right.
And by the way, if we had a national press that was 98% in lockstep with the Republican Party, you'd probably see some pretty crummy reporting.
Right.
In that regard too. But right now, as you say, look, this is a legit story. The guy was arrested. He is charged with doxing these members of Congress. And you've got a press that is completely uninterested in this story.
Yeah.
Why? Because it makes their favored candidates look bad. Well, because there might be something really gross and dirty going on. So again, look, we don't even know. This guy's a paid fellow. We don't even know what outside organization he's getting paid by at this point, right?
There's also something to be said about going to Sheila Jackson Lee's office. For those of you who don't know who she is, she's a Democrat from Texas. That is truly where careers go to die. I mean, nobody wants to work for Representative Sheila Jackson Lee. She is an incredibly abusive member. There have been stories about her and how how mean she is to staff. So, I mean, people don't sort of actively. So it wasn't only that, he goes from the Senate side to the House side, then he goes from, from paid to unpaid. This is the narrative that's being spun. It's also, he goes to work, again, for a member nobody wants to work for. So, there are some really significant questions here. What he did was dox 3 United States senators who, at the time, were deciding the future of Kavanaugh, okay? That is significant. He snuck into Senator Hassan's office I keep saying it the wrong way, Hassan's office to do this. He actually, according to reports, he snuck into an office in Senator Hassan's office where he was not authorized to be because he had been fired from that office months before. When a Hassan staffer who was working late shooed him out of the office, said, get out of the office, he then wrote that staffer an email filled with threats saying that he was going to reveal some of the childhood, some of the health information of the children of some of these senators, that he was going to reveal social security numbers and other private conversations and emails. This kid is scary. So what we should be asking is, this outside organization that was supposedly paying him, what other people are they paying? Are they placing people on the Hill, and what's the purpose? Is it to get information like the private addresses of United States senators so he can dox them? I mean, let's not forget there was an attempted murder on this Bernie bro tried to kill 24 members of the Republicans who were practicing on a ball field not a mile from my house last year. This doxing can lead to some really scary stuff. We could have some unhinged lunatics showing up at these senators' doors to intimidate them, to scare them, or worse, or their families. And so these are really serious questions. And again, it's really disappointing to see that no one's asking these questions.
Absolutely. Again, talking with Julie Gunlock of the Independent Women's Forum. You can read her piece all about this at American Greatness. And Julie, let me ask you something, because you would know the answer to this far better than I would, just because of your knowledge of the practices on the Hill. So as you write in your piece, like unpaid interns, those are normal, right? Every congressional office is going to have them. Every congressional office is going to have paid staff. How common is it to have a paid fellow working in a congressperson's office or a senator's office that's not getting paid? It's not a taxpayer position. It's not getting paid by the taxpayers, but it is, again, coming from some sort of outside organization that's placed an individual in a politician's office. Is that common?
Yeah, it is common. And actually, but it is common, although I've never heard of an outside organization paying. I've always known fellows to be from, for instance, and I write about this in my article, when I worked for Senator Mike DeWine, former senator from Ohio, we had someone there from the U.S. Marshal's office because DeWine, in his position as being on the Senate Judiciary Committee, same committee that held the hearings for Kavanaugh, they had some business, some legislation before the committee dealing with the U.S. Marshal Service. So he had a marshal in his office actually advising him on policies that affected the Marshal Service. But in that case, it was the U.S. Marshal Service that was paying for that fellow to be assigned to our office. I've never heard of outside organizations, again, unnamed outside organizations, meaning are they activist organizations? Are they somehow left? Like, what is that? That's very strange. It's usually either a private business, like you're part of industry. Maybe you've got some IT interests, so you have someone from Microsoft or someone from Facebook. That's common. But to have just some random person paid for, he also had no real expertise. I mean, he had low-level jobs on the Hill, and he was in grad school for IT. Not exactly someone who is a mid-level position at an agency or an industry, or someone that brings some real institutional knowledge.
Yeah. And here's the other interesting thing, Julie. There's been no think tank or nonprofit foundation that's come forward.
No.
Since Costco's arrest to say Jackson Costco was employed by us, but after this arrest, obviously like nobody's come forward to claim this guy.
No,
which
and no
is also
reporters.
kind of
I'm
interesting.
I'm not a reporter. I am an opinion writer, and I work for and what you guys know me on the show. I usually talk about food. I'm not, or regulations on silly nanny state regulations. Like, I am not an investigative reporter, and yet I frankly think that what I wrote was really much more interesting than the narrative that is being placed out there, which is, oh, he was this hapless, overzealous, intern who kind of was a naughty boy. He is he's scary. This kid is scary, and nobody is asking questions. And again, I'm not suggesting because of his family's connections to Feinstein that there's some big huge web here, but there are certainly a few questions left to be answered. And again, nobody from the media seems interested.
Well, Costco is due in court today, so maybe we'll see if prosecutors have any questions, Julie. And listen, hey, we would be remiss if we let you go and we didn't actually ask about the nanny state. So did you see our friend Lenore Scanase's piece on the worst towns in Virginia to go trick-or-treating?
Oh, yeah.
And the fact that Chesapeake, Virginia, if you trick-or-treat over the age of 12, you could be arrested?
What in the world? What in the world is going on in this world? I mean, it is so shocking to me. Yes, I saw that article. I was horrified. I'll be writing on it as well. And of course, Lenore is so good at highlighting these issues. But it's complete insanity. Yet again, the state coming and getting involved in something that needs no state involvement, and actually threatening people with jail for trick or treating.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Julie.
Yeah.
All right, listen, thank you so much. And again, great piece at American Greatness. We've tweeted it out, and folks can read it there. And hopefully we get a chance to see you again soon.
Thanks so much.